Hey, welcome back to Wired Logic HQ. Before you watch this video, I want you to think about something. How many photos have you deleted without posting them? How many thoughts have you typed out, stared at for 30 seconds, and then erased? How many times have you caught yourself mid-sentence in a group chat thinking, actually, never mind, and backing out? There's something happening inside your brain in those moments. It's not laziness, it's not shyness, exactly. It's something deeper. And today, we're diving into the psychology of why you hate being perceived, and why that might actually be the healthiest instinct you have. We live in an age of unprecedented visibility. Your phone is literally a broadcast station in your pocket. You can reach thousands of people in seconds. And yet, paradoxically, more people than ever report feeling invisible, lonely, misunderstood, and simultaneously, many of us experience intense anxiety at the thought of being truly seen. This isn't a contradiction. It's actually the core of what we're exploring today. Let me paint you a scenario. It's Tuesday evening, you took a photo earlier, you felt good in it. You're scrolling through your phone and you open your camera roll. There it is. For a moment, you think, yeah, I could post this. And then something happens. You start calculating. You're running a mental cost-benefit analysis that would make an economist jealous. You think about who will see it, your mom, your boss, that person you had a weird interaction with last month, your ex, the girl from high school you haven't talked to in 7 years, but who's somehow still on your feed. And suddenly, that photo doesn't feel like it belongs to you. It feels like it belongs to an audience that might judge you, misunderstand you, use it against you somehow. So you delete it. And in that moment, you might feel relieved, but you might also feel something else, a quiet frustration, a sense of loss, because somewhere inside there was a version of you that wanted to share that photo, wanted to be seen. But another version of you, the protective version, the strategic version, said no. This is what I call the perception paradox. We're simultaneously desperate to be understood and terrified of being judged. We want connection, but we're suspicious of exposure. And the fascinating part? This isn't a modern problem invented by social media. It's been baked into human psychology for centuries. Social media has just amplified it to an almost unbearable degree. To understand why you hate being perceived, we need to talk about a concept in psychology called self-consciousness. Now, when most people hear that term, they think it means being shy or awkward. But psychologists actually break it down into two distinct types, and this distinction is crucial to understanding your behavior. The first is private self-consciousness. This is your internal awareness of your own thoughts, feelings, motivations, and values. When you're privately self-conscious, you're introspective. You're thinking about who you really are, what you believe, what you want. You're examining yourself from the inside out. This is the voice in your head that has opinions about your opinions. It's reflective, it's deep, and it's almost always non-judgmental because it's just you observing yourself. The second type is public self-consciousness. This is your awareness of how you appear to others. It's the mental image you have of yourself as an object in someone else's perception. When you're publicly self-conscious, you're not thinking about who you are, you're thinking about who people think you are. You're running a simulation of their judgment in your mind. You're predicting their reactions. You're filtering your authentic self through an imaginary lens of external evaluation. Here's the critical insight. These two types of self-consciousness are often in direct conflict. Your private self wants to post that photo. Your authentic self enjoyed that moment. Your genuine thoughts and feelings were expressed in that image. But your public self steps in and says, wait, what will they think? How will this be interpreted? Might this backfire?
Your public self is protective, strategic, and paranoid in the most human way possible. And when public self-consciousness wins, when you delete the draft, when you don't share the thought, when you edit yourself into silence, you're not protecting yourself, you're fragmenting yourself. You're creating a gap between who you are and who you're willing to let people see. But here's what's interesting. According to research on self-consciousness, people who are high in public self-consciousness are often more anxious, more depressed, and more socially withdrawn. Why? Because the constant monitoring of how they appear to others is exhausting. It's like running a security camera inside your own mind, 24/7. And the thing about cameras is, they change behavior. People behave differently when they know they're being watched. They become less authentic, less creative, less themselves. This is called the spotlight effect, and it's worth understanding. The spotlight effect is the tendency to overestimate how much other people notice and care about your appearance and behavior. You think everyone's looking at you. You think they're judging you. You think they're mentally cataloging all your flaws and inconsistencies. But the truth is, most people are too busy worrying about their own spotlight to shine one on you. Now let's talk about why this matters so much psychologically. There's a theory in psychology called self-determination theory, developed by researchers Edward Deci and Richard Ryan, and it's one of the most important frameworks for understanding human motivation and well-being. According to SDT, humans have three fundamental psychological needs. The first is autonomy, the need to feel like you have control over your own life and choices. The second is competence, the need to feel effective and capable. And the third is relatedness, the need to feel connected to others, to belong. Here's where it gets interesting. Social media and public perception threaten all three of these needs simultaneously. When you're constantly aware of how you're being perceived, your autonomy is compromised. You're not making choices based on what you want, you're making choices based on what you think others want from you. You're outsourcing your decision-making to an imaginary audience, and psychologically, this is devastating. When people feel they lack autonomy, when they feel controlled by external forces, they experience decreased motivation, increased anxiety, and lower overall well-being. Your competence is also threatened, because now every post isn't just a form of expression, it's a test. Will people like it? Will they get it? Will it make me look good or bad? You're not expressing yourself anymore. You're auditioning for approval, and that's exhausting. That's demoralizing. And relatedness? Here's the paradox. You're trying to connect with people by controlling how they perceive you. But authentic connection doesn't happen when you're curating. It happens when you're honest, when you're vulnerable, when you let people see the real you, including the messy parts. By trying to control perception to maximize relatedness, you're actually undermining it. So, what happens? You withdraw. You lurk. You observe without participating. You become what I call the lurker, someone who consumes content, engages with others' posts, but rarely shares their authentic self. And here's the thing. I'm not saying that's wrong. In fact, I think there's profound wisdom in it. Let's reframe something. When you choose not to post something, when you choose not to share, when you choose to stay private, that's not a defeat. That's not you failing to be social or failing to use social media correctly. That's you exercising power. Think about it. In a world where attention is currency, where visibility is equated with success, where influencer is now a legitimate job title, choosing invisibility is actually an act of rebellion. It's you saying, I don't need your validation. I don't need you to see me to know that I exist and that I matter. There's a reason privacy is a human right. There's a reason philosophers and psychologists have long argued that the ability to have a private self, a self that's not constantly monitored and evaluated, is essential to human dignity and well-being. Carl Rogers, one of the most influential psychologists of the 20th century, talked about the importance of having a space where you can be fully yourself without external evaluation. He called this the foundation of psychological health. You need a place, physical or mental, where you don't have to perform, where you can think unfiltered thoughts, where you can feel unmonitored emotions, where you exist just for the sake of existing, not for the sake of being perceived. When you delete that draft, when you choose not to post, when you decide to keep something just for yourself, that's honoring that need. You're protecting the integrity of your private self. You're saying, this moment, this thought, this feeling, this is mine. I don't need it to be public for it to be real. And that's healthy. That's sane. That's actually a sign of psychological strength, not weakness. There's a concept called selective self-disclosure, and research shows that people who disclose selectively, who are thoughtful about what they share and with whom, tend to have healthier relationships and better mental health than people who either over-disclose or under-disclose. The key is intentionality. The key is choice. When you're lurking, observing, keeping most of yourself private, if that's an active choice you're making because it feels right and protective and healthy, that's wisdom. But if it's coming from anxiety and shame and a sense that you're not good enough to be seen, that's different. That's worth exploring. The question isn't, am I posting enough? The question is, am I choosing authentically?
Let me tell you something radical. Some of the most psychologically healthy people I know are the ones who barely use social media. They're not hiding, they're not broken, they're not missing out. They've simply made a conscious decision that their inner life is more valuable to them than external validation. Think about the people you know who seem genuinely content, who aren't constantly anxious about how they're perceived, who can be weird and authentic and unapologetic about it. Often, they're the ones who've given themselves permission to not be constantly visible. They've created a boundary, and within that boundary, they're free. There's a Japanese concept called the space between things, the negative space. And Japanese aesthetics have long recognized that the space is just as important as the objects. In fact, the space gives meaning to the objects. Your private self is the It's the space where meaning is created, and you don't need to fill it with an audience to validate it. The irony is this: the more you try to control how you're perceived, the more transparent your anxiety becomes. People can sense it, they can feel the performance. But the moment you stop trying to be perceived a certain way and just are, the moment you own your choices, including your choice to be private, you become magnetic, you become interesting, you become real. This doesn't mean you should never post. It doesn't mean you should withdraw from all social connection. It means you should choose consciously. Post because you want to, not because you think you should. Share because it's authentic, not because it's strategic. Connect with people who appreciate the real you, not the curated you. And crucially, give yourself permission to be invisible when invisibility is what you need. So, the next time you find yourself hovering over that post button, running that mental calculation, considering whether to hit delete, pause. Notice what you're feeling. Is this anxiety speaking, or is this wisdom? Is this shame, or is this self-respect? Because here's the truth: you don't hate being perceived. You hate the loss of control that comes with being perceived. You hate the fragmentation between your private self and your public self. You hate the feeling of performing instead of being. So choose consciously. Post if it feels authentic, delete if it doesn't. Lurk if that's where you're comfortable. Speak up if you have something true to say. And whatever you do, own it. Don't frame invisibility as a failure. Frame it as a choice. Frame it as power. You exist whether anyone sees you or not. That's not sad. That's freeing. If this resonated with you, hit that like button. Subscribe to Wired Logic HQ for more deep dives into the psychology of being human. And let me know in the comments, what's something you've chosen not to share, and how did it feel? Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.